Marisa Norcross.
And I'm Dave Freund, and this is The Next Page. Marisa, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am terrific. You know, it's a little chilly today.
It is chilly, but the sun is out, which makes me happy.
The sun is out. The sun is out. And we know that just to the north of us, our neighbors like 15 miles away are getting hammered with lake effect snow.
Yeah. Yes.
But the sun is out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's chilly. And I'm glad we're inside recording our podcast and I'm not sitting outside because that would be really cold.
Mm-hmm.
So, question I always ask you. So when you got this post just this morning,
Mm-hmm.
what was your first thought when you read the title, In Search of Excellence?
I didn't have an immediate reaction to the title.
Okay.
Those words don't surprise me when they come from you. But, you opened with a line about how last week we talked about what you learned in 2021. We went over some of your notes from your reflection period. And that, there was something that, was brought up for you that we maybe didn't talk about in the podcast, being the topic of excellence.
Right.
And it was so funny because you're right. I didn't notice that when we were talking last week, but I see it now.
Yeah. And it was so I kind of launched into the topic of In Search of Excellence because of the book, that Tom Peters and Robert Waterman wrote. And I guess they released this back in the early 80s, like 82, I think. And they had studied 43 companies and identified 8 key characteristics that made these companies excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And these companies spread the spectrum of types of businesses. And that was like when I was a young manager, it was like everybody wanted you to read In Search of Excellence. You read In Search of Excellence and you read The Goal by Eli Goldratt, which is about the theory of constraints. So, it was like that's what you're supposed to read.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was thinking about our podcast last week and the conversation that we had, why would I reflect on a year? And what were the changes that I was going to bring about in my life based on my reflections? And you had challenged me to take a top 10 of all of those reflections or learnings and literally build them into a list that would be next to my, like maybe on my vision board. And then we would follow up on how was I doing toward implementing some of those learnings or changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, the reason you do that is really a search for excellence. Now, we touched a little bit on this in our conversation before we hit record, but I get the feeling sometimes that excellence, it's misunderstood.
Yes. Yeah.
And you shared some really great thoughts. Do you remember what you were talking about where you said, you think some people perceive excellence as...
Well, I struggled to get my words out for quite some time, but I think...
That's why I'm throwing it back to you, because...
I think that sometimes we look at excellence as, like, unattainable or
right.
something that is almost, like, overly glamorized. Like, it's not for the everyday.
Okay, good, yeah.
And, I think that what... you're going to talk about and what you've realized and what we kind of decided is that no, we're really talking about not necessarily like being the best, but doing our best and striving to be better all the time, right? So that's why you did your reflection, because 2021 was great. You were amazing in 2021. You did great things. You accomplished a lot, and you want to continue to do that and more in this next year.
Right. Exactly. What I was looking at was, even the, our training revenues at MACNY were exceptional based on all of the unusual events that we had. We exceeded expectations, and our fiscal year at work is July 1st to June 30. So, we were, finishing my 2021 reflection, I'm looking at the first 6 months of our fiscal year for work, and it dramatically exceeded expectations and budgets and earnings. So, wow, it was a great year. And I had shared this last week as well, that my my word for 2021 was reimagine, and my word for 2022 is opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you have a mindset of pursuing opportunity, it naturally goes hand in hand with pursuing excellence,
Mm-hmm.
and a search for excellence, a search of excellence. And you said it so well that it's not attaining this very limited perfection kind of thing. It's just being better.
Mm-hmm.
And people kind of miss the boat on that. Where I think a lot of us think, and I've thought in the past, that excellence might be unattainable, so why try?
Mm-hmm.
When again, excellence isn't I'm better than somebody else. Excellence is tomorrow I'm going to be better than myself today. I'm going to learn and grow today, so tomorrow I am better. And that truly is a search for personal excellence. So it's not hard. It just takes effort.
And consistency.
So one of the things that I did was and our listeners know, I love to find lists.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a list. The list was 11 key characteristics of personal excellence. But I felt that one of them really wasn't a key characteristic. It was just something they tagged on there. And I think 10 sounds better than 11 anyway. So I tweaked the list. And so the three that I picked up on, and I'm going to ask you to tell me, what were some of your favorites of the list of 10, and there are some that you want me to go a little deeper on when I get done with the three. But the three that I picked was value excellence. And I think that's a key one, because that's a simple choice.
Mm-hmm.
Choose to value excellence. I have a sign on my office wall at work in DeWitt that basically says "No shortcuts ever!" ! Now I put that up there not because I have mastered it, but because, quite frankly, I haven't. And what I've discovered is that the place where I'm most likely to take my shortcuts are in things I'm good at. So we typically will take a shortcut in our gifted areas. Now what that means is we don't value excellence, because the place where I can truly be the best is in my gifted area. So I literally have to remind myself, don't mail in this class. Don't mail in this talk. You have to give everything you have to it. So that to me is just, I'm valuing it. So I think it's a choice. You have to choose. I want to choose to be the best husband I can be. I want to choose to be the best father I can be, the best grandfather I can be, the best friend I can be
Mm-hmm.
to people. And I want to value that. Number 2 is don't settle for average. And I love this one. And there's a lot of times I've talked about this, but you don't go out, if you're going to go out for a special occasion, you don't go to an average restaurant. I wouldn't say to Marissa, can you tell me, is there an average restaurant? Because I'd like to take my wife out for our anniversary. I would say, and you and I, we've talked about restaurants
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit. What we haven't talked about on the podcast much lately is food.
We haven't.
Do you realize that? Oh my goodness. Our listeners who are foodies are really let down on that one. But we've talked about restaurants.
Yeah, we have.
And we've gone to the same restaurants at different times.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about when I look back at 2021, I had some excellent meals
Mm-hmm.
at the Brewster Inn in Cazenovia. The food was amazing. The service was amazing. The environment was amazing. And if I would have said to you, Marissa, where should I go for a really great meal? You would have said the Brewster Inn would be one of the choices, right?
Yeah.
Because we've talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't want average in our life, why would we be okay with being average? And sadly, the greatest percentage of people are okay with being average. So that's a good news and a bad news scenario. The good news is if you want to be striving for excellence, you'll stand out wherever you are, because so few people want to do it. And the example that I use here too is, so people say, well, this is terrible. There's no way I can do that. Well, the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little word extra. If you go to a restaurant and the food is good, but the service is exceptional, it now became an excellent.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a little extra. And then the third one is remain committed and focused on what really matters. So what is it that's important to me? And we talked last week about the fact that if we start getting waylaid by distractions, we've lost our focus and we aren't really believing in what really matters.
Mm-hmm.
So getting back to what really matters gets you focused. And now I can work on the things that are the most important to me. And that actually leads me to be living a life of excellence.
Mm-hmm.
So there were 7 we didn't talk about.
Yep.
What are the ones that might have jumped out at you?
So looking at that full list of 10 that you sent me, I chose 5 that were my favorite, and two of them overlap with yours. Value excellence, because I think if you don't have that, then the other 9 don't matter. You kind of need that one as a foundational piece. And then the other overlapping one I had was remain committed and focused on what really matters, because I think that's the consistency piece that I mentioned earlier. When you can maintain that commitment and that focus, that's where those, natural habits start getting built into place. And that's where the consistency comes from, and it becomes part of your life. So there were 3 more that I had highlighted on my list. And the first one I'll mention is to display integrity and sound ethics.
Yes.
Be a person of character. And we talk about character a lot on our podcast.
We do.
So what does this one mean to you, or what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think that display integrity and sound ethics, be this person of character. It's just be a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Treat everyone you meet with value, or as a person of value. I've used the phrase that I stole from John Maxwell. On a scale of 1 to 10, everybody is a 10. We just don't know what they're a 10 at yet.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about if that's the way you really view people, you will naturally be wanting the best for people.
Mm-hmm.
Don't believe the lies that people say about others. Don't tolerate people saying critical, dismissive things of others. Yeah. Just live above the noise. How's that?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe sometimes that's what it means to me. Doing the right thing when nobody's looking. Absolutely. Being honest in all of your communications. Don't spin facts to lend something to make you look better. Just be the person you would want to be friends with.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah. And I think this one really kind of builds on that value excellence piece, because, when you're holding yourself to that standard of integrity and sound ethics and strong character, there's no room for anything else.
Right.
And that's kind of one of those building blocks, I think. And the next one I had on my list, which I've kind of already alluded to, was I said demonstrate consistency. So that one should come to no surprise that I chose that as one of my favorites on the list, because again, I think that's what really can set you apart. That can take you from ordinary to extraordinary, is when you remain focused and demonstrate that consistency. You will see that improvement over time.
So, question for you is, how do you think people get the ability to be consistent?
How do they get to the ability?
Or what causes a person to be consistent?
I think consistency is more of a choice. I've seen this talked about a lot, hand in hand with motivation, right? Like someone would say, like, how do you stay motivated to do X, Y, Z every day? Or how do you stay motivated to do this, that, the other thing? And it's really not motivation that keeps us going sometimes, but rather just consistency. And whether that be like a habit or, just kind of like a personal promise or an accountability partner. It's just kind of a little bit different. And I think we all have it. I mean, because we all are consistent in things in our lives. We might not be consistent with everything. But we all certainly have that ability.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think one of the keys there you talked about a promise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the key for us there is, did we make a promise? Like, there's a lot of people say, how could I have been so consistent about with writing my posts every week for who knows how many years, right?
Many.
And many, since October 2016. Yes. And the point was, I made a promise to you that I would get it to you.
Mm-hmm.
And when I made that promise to you that I would get it to you, I'm not going to go against that promise. So I think that helps. If we have that accountability partner, if we have that person that's holding us, that we've made a commitment to, I think that really helps us with our consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And what was your next one?
The last one I had highlighted was never stop improving, which I'm shocked was not on your top 3.
Well, and I think, so why is that one so important?
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of the heart of what we're saying today is, it's not being the best or striving for perfection. It's just about being better than you were yesterday, being better than you were last week, than you were last month, than you were last year.
Right.
And that's improvement.
Right.
And to never stop that, to never lose that like hunger or that desire to do that, not settling, not settling with ordinary, not settling with average.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And it's so easy to continue to improve if just every day you ask yourself, what did I learn?
Mm-hmm.
What can I change? So that's great. And those also would have been, my favorites. I mean, I loved everything on the list. And just for our listeners, just before we close, we'll kind of go through the rest of this list. Pay attention to detail. Listen. One of the things I want to do in this year is I want to be a better listener. I want to listen to more details, listen to more facts, listen to things like that.
Mm-hmm.
We already talked about some of these. I just got to make sure I check them off my list. Show genuine respect for others.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is that thing that goes into, do I value people? Am I valuing people? That type of thing. Go the second mile. And it's interesting that comes from the time of when the Roman Empire ruled the world, was that any Roman soldier could compel you to carry his armor. And you had to do it a mile. And if I'm not mistaken, they could compel you to go the second mile. And my point was, go the second mile without being asked. If somebody asks you to do one thing, do just a little bit more. And when you do, you're actually delighting people rather than just satisfying. So again, I think that separates you and makes you, puts you on the path of excellence. And then the last one was always give 100%. And I love the example that I heard from Coach John Wooden, where he would have players that just, for whatever reason, they broke up with their girlfriend or whatever, and they came to practice and it wasn't all there. They just said, Coach, I'll give you 110% next time. And he said, no, you can't. Because he said, there is only 100% that you can give. You can never give more than 100%, but you can give less. And people would say, well, how do I always give 100%? And I think the key there is understand in your day when you're having energy drains.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure you reserve enough energy for those important times. Meetings that you need to go to, presentations you're going to make. For me, it's a podcast, a class. And also when your family gets together, when you get home at night, don't shortcut your family. Because if we go back to focusing on what really matters, if you don't focus on them, you certainly can't live a life of excellence. What did we miss?
Well, we'll never know what that 11th item was.
See, I can actually tell you what the 11th item was. Let's see. I can hold on a second. I'll find it. It's not that far away. The 11th item was, and the survey says, that's from Family. Where is the 11th item? Oh, make excellence a lifestyle. Well, if you're doing all of those things, it is a lifestyle. So that's why I left it out.
Okay.
That's what it was. I have no idea what we're talking about next week.
I'm sure you'll come up with something.
I will. So anything special coming up?
No. Winter is always kind of quiet. How about you?
Yeah. Well, God willing, and airplanes fly and COVID stays away, my wife and I are going to go visit her father and sister for the weekend.
Oh, so nice.
Down in Florida and come back. So we're going down quick. We're coming home quick.
Mm-hmm.
We've got multiple rapid test kits, so we make sure we don't make anybody sick.
Mm-hmm.
We've been vaccinated and all those good things. So we're
good.
hopefully going to be able to make that trip.
Enjoy.
So with that, I'm Dave Freund.
I'm Marisa Norcross.
And this was The Next Page.